Alright, take two, I guess, because apparently the first take wasn't going too well, and my phone decided to stop letting me record that take. Anyways, back to what I was saying, and I've also got my cat here. Say hello to the camera, Hylia. Anyways, ADHD. Perfect segue into the actual topic of my essay, I guess. What was I? Yeah. Just a quick heads up, I'm going to be exclusively talking about my personal experiences, along with a couple of things I pull up just as statistics. So, you know, chances are this will be a very, very heavily, what's the word? Very, very heavily, it'll be a lot about my experience, basically. So chances are, and the reason I'm doing a video essay for this alongside of the already written essay I've done is because part of my audience is supposed to be children with ADHD. And that very group is probably one of the most obvious reasons why I would have to make a video essay for this, because they're probably not going to have a long enough attention span to sit there and read the whole essay. And that is coming from someone who is a former child who also has ADHD. And yeah, let's get right into the video essay, I guess. Not going to go over too much of my personal history when it comes to the history of me getting diagnosed, but I'm going to be jumping straight into the concept of the school system, because this video essay sort of assumes you know at least a little bit about ADHD. But if you don't, I'll probably leave some links somewhere in the video page, wherever I decide to upload this, probably to YouTube. So if I do, it'll be in the description. If not, search for wherever else I might have put the link. But just a quick overview of stuff. About 6.1 million children in the United States aged 2 to 7 have ADHD of some type. There are three different subtypes. One of them is just both the subtypes combined. There's ADHD inattentive subtype and ADHD hyperactive impulsive subtype. And then there's also combined subtype, which is just the two of them combined, which is the one that I have. And yeah, let's get started with the video, I guess. So first thing I probably want to mention is yeah, let's talk a little bit about the way that the school system works. So I'm guessing most of you have seen at least some of the United States school system, purely because you're college students in the United States, and so you sort of are currently in the school system, not the mandatory parts. I went through all of the mandatory parts, and oh boy, let me tell you. But that'll be for later on in the essay as well, won't it, Hylia? Anyways, yeah, I'll be for later on in the essay as well. The thing I want to focus on right now is something to do with something else. Yeah, the school system itself. So talk about the school system, yes. And specifically how the school system functions as a thing. So in the United States, there are, 13 years of mandatory education? You have year 0, which is kindergarten, then years 1 through 12, well, primary school, which is years 1 through 8, and then secondary school is years 9 through 12. And a lot of that time, and I mean almost all, actually all the time that I just mentioned, is spent in a very, very rigid study sort of format, where you're not really doing much outside of the read the textbook, listen to the lecturer, and take notes sort of thing. Even like during the pandemic, I remember a lot of my classes were like very, very note-taking oriented. There wasn't a ton of like non-note-taking projects even in 2020 and 2021. So I have a lot of okay, I'm just gonna talk about note-taking to start things off. it's not exactly a great activity for a lot of students with ADHD because we tend to not be able to focus on it very well. And I mean, if I were to suggest an alternative to note taking, maybe something that involves directly experiencing whatever it is you're having the children learn, or even better, hear me out, provide notes in a form, like provide already done notes in a format that the child is going to actually be able to keep their attention on to read them, which is why I am doing this as a video essay, in which I am also constantly doing a whole bunch of other stuff, like taking care of this thing, because there's a higher chance that a child, a student with ADHD, may be able to do this as opposed to just look at a PDF of notes. And as a result of that, I feel like the fact that I, as a 19-year-old who is not and does not plan to become an educator, can do things in a way that better accommodates these students than I've seen most educators in my time do, really shines a light on the problems with education, and specifically education the way it is right now for students with ADHD. Because don't get me wrong, education is a thing that should definitely be provided to everyone. It's just, if you're going to provide it to everyone, make sure it is accessible to everyone. Just sort of what my essay is about. It's just looking at one specific example of a group that education is not accessible for. And I just realized I don't know whether or not my microphone is working. So if it's not, I'm going to have to retake this entire video, and it's already been 7 minutes, and it's already take 2 because take 1 sort of kicked me out of recording. But yeah, education for students with ADHD. First big problem: note taking. And as I've already mentioned, they're pretty obvious solutions that are just not implemented. And I'm going to be getting onto solutions that are currently used later on, particularly common accommodations made for ADHD, the accommodations I had made, like the accommodations that had been made for me, I mean, and like other things that aren't necessarily academic accommodations, such as medication and stuff. And I'll be going over why some of those, like actually why all of those things aren't necessarily adequate to helping the student. But in the meantime, sorry, she's like looking at something, and I'm trying to figure out what. But anyways, yeah, education, yeah. Next big thing I wanted to talk about, homework, because if I didn't have so many nights during high school where I was up past 10 or 11 p.m. trying to do homework for my classes and being unable to focus and get things done, I swear, every single day of high school felt like I was just going through the same sort of thing over and over and over again. When my teachers would be frustrated that I wasn't turning in my work, and I'd be frustrated because I couldn't focus on my work for long enough to get it done to turn in. And then the special ed teachers were frustrated because my grades were going down. And it all just led with everyone being frustrated as opposed to me getting an education, or at least a proper education. And what are you looking at, huh? What are you looking at? Want to say hi to the camera again? You want to be let go? Okay. Go on. Go on. Go on. Anyways, I was talking about students and ADHD, right? So homework's a big problem because not only are you automatically doing it in a different and probably more distracting environment than the school, like than a school classroom, which already, no matter what you do, children with ADHD are going to find a way to be distracted. I'm speaking from personal experience when I say that. I could have been put in a blank empty room. I was, at one point, put in a practically entirely empty room. It was like the learning support room for my study hall. Study hall, it had a special name, like study skills or something. So I was put in that room, and I still always managed to find a way to be distracted, even in my senior year when I was the only person in that classroom, which is kind of insane when you think about it, because the most obvious thing that was even right there in front of this person who was heavily involved with making my IEP was sort of overlooked and not really properly accommodated, aside from just simply, I can take tests in a separate room, and I have a couple of times where my teacher can remind me to pay attention. So, once again, we'll be getting to the solutions that are already in place for such things in a few minutes. But is that there's also the whole raising your hand thing. I've never understood why teachers do this. Like, why do we have to raise our hand? I mean, it's kind of obvious how students with ADHD may not respond very well to needing to raise their hand in order to speak when such things are already difficult for students with ADHD, like, not immediately saying the first thing that comes to mind. Because remember, a lot of us have impulse control issues. I myself have impulse control issues, as my bank account would very quickly tell anyone. Oh god. I swear this is not scripted at all. This is just me talking to the camera. Yeah. Impulse control issues. Something that really does not work well in a system where you're expected to raise your hand in order to speak. I actually used to get in trouble quite a decent bit back in primary school because I just simply wouldn't raise my hand, because as soon as I knew what the answer was, I automatically blurted it out without thinking. Happens a lot, even to this day. And for that, I feel really, really bad for all of my professors who are like active lecturers, if that makes sense. So not like my English class where they practically just give you the textbook and the which in and of itself is worse for students with ADHD, but I'll be getting to that in a second. And not to call you out, Mrs. Holtzinger, I know you're just making the course to be most beneficial to the majority of students, but like this video lecture is not about you. It's about the people above you, if that makes sense. You're fine. I recognize it's not within your power to do anything. Or at least it's not within your power to do much. It's probably also not within the power of your direct higher ups, but like the further you go down, the further you go up the chain, the more power they have to actually do something about the whole thing, which kind of frustrates me because they're not the ones who are actually suffering through the education system as a student with ADHD, and they're not the ones who are helping said student. They're just sort of the ones who are telling the people who are helping the student what to do, regardless of the student's actual needs or anything. And I should probably have kept an eye on the cat, because I have no idea where she's gone. Oh well. Let me just get to a more comfortable position. Right, I was talking about specific aspects of the school system that are kind of problematic for students with ADHD, and talk about those two. Tests. This is one that I actually will be praising the accommodation, like the way that we already accommodate students with ADHD for later. but tests, specifically for me, tests in like first and second grade, well, first grade mainly, first and second, because I didn't have my IEP written the entirety of second grade. I only had just been diagnosed basically when the year started. But first and second grade, right? We had like spelling tests. I swear those were freaking torture for me because I just couldn't pay attention to them. Even the slightest thing would make me distracted. Literally, you had to have nothing else in the room and I would still manage to find a way to be distracted, which is exactly what ADHD is. Well, exactly what inattentive ADHD is in terms of the problems that it provides to students in primary education. And I'll be explaining further all of these things later, but as of right now, I want to throw a little bit of statistics at all of you. Where was I? Yes, statistics. Actually, no. Let's hold back on the statistics for a moment. Let's talk a little bit more about the whole sitting still part as well, because I found that I swear, going through the education system as a student with ADHD was absolutely terrible because it felt like everyone else had this sort of secret ability to just do things that I couldn't, and it sort of sucked because even though I knew all the material, even like a lot of my professors and a lot of my teachers knew I knew all the material. A lot of my friends saw me knowing all the material, but then I'd be failing the course because I couldn't pay attention, had difficulty with tests because of it, couldn't pay attention, had difficulty turning in homework because of it. I'd forget homework was even assigned half the time. It just sucked. But getting back to the points that aren't that. Oh God. Also, if I look tired, I was up a bit late last night, just finishing up the written part of this essay. So, but anyways, ADHD in the classroom. I swear, I've seen so many people praising teachers who teach students with ADHD, or teachers who have a lot of students with ADHD, and it's like, yeah, nice. You teach these students. We are these students. We've been going through the education system this entire time. This education system that was built specifically in a way that makes it almost impossible for us. And I'm not saying that students with ADHD cannot have success with school. I actually did have a decent amount of success with school. But I will say right now, that is not the case for the majority. And actually, I cited this one thing in my essay for the written part of the essay. I'll see if I can pull it up real quick. Where was it? What was it called? Oh well, I guess I'm not finding it. But I'll link to the thing in whatever format of a video I decide to upload this in. If I upload it to YouTube, I'll link it in the description or something. If I upload it to some other platform, I'll find a place to do that for it. What's the cat doing? Hold on 1 second, I'll be right back. I found her and she was messing around with a candy wrapper. Do you want to say hello, Hylia? Come on, say hello. Yeah, never mind. She's not going to say hello, is she? Alright, you're free to go. But stop messing around with random stuff on the floor, okay? Alright. Where was I? ADHD in education, something about specific aspects of education that are kind of stacked against students with ADHD. No, let's just move on to the next part of it. Let's move on to the next part of it. And hi, Leah. Good girl. Alright. Video essay. Where was I? Actually, I'll be right back again. Alright. I took care of the cat, got distracted, got myself a snack. Right here. And now I'm back to the video. So, I don't want this video to be taken as like I'm against schooling in general, or even that I'm against specific instructors. I am not. Because once again, I have called out my English teacher already in this video essay that I'm doing for English class, and my intention is not to make her feel bad, it's to highlight how some parts of the education system that she does not have any control over, I don't think. Some parts of the education system that even affect her class make it more difficult for students with ADHD, and without putting the blame on her, because it's not her fault. Just sort of lightly pointing in the direction of what needs to be changed, while using that class as an example, because it's the one that one of the ones I'm currently taking. So the way that the class works is in the forefront of my memory. Anyways, oh yeah, reading from the textbook. I'm gonna admit, reading from the textbook was one of the most annoying parts of school for a solid 13 and a half years of school now, from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. Yeah, so that's 13 years, because K 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah. That. Plus the beginning of this year of uni. Reading from textbooks. Like, it wouldn't be so bad if I'm not even going to blame this part on the school. Well, I am kind of blaming it on the school system. But I'm also going to blame part of it on textbook manufacturers. Textbook manufacturers just don't know how to make a good book for students with ADHD. And to be fair, a lot of people don't. The only reason I can even think of a method at which would be decent to provide information for students with ADHD is because I am currently a student and I have ADHD. So kind of makes it a little bit easier, because I can just think, well, what would I want in a method of delivering information? Of course, I'm not doing the best job at then delivering that information because I keep on getting distracted and all that. But I'm doing my best, and I'm still making pretty decent work of what I need to mention. Right. Something to do with education. Yeah, I feel like I don't need to explain why reading from the textbook is kind of a difficult thing for students with ADHD, because you know what? I'm going to explain it anyways. A lot of people with ADHD have difficulty paying attention to things, either because of inattentive subtype ADHD, or because of combined subtype ADHD, or very much because of hyperactive impulsive subtype ADHD, making it difficult to just simply sit still and do one task. And when you're expected to then sit still and do one task for potentially hours on end, it's just like, damn. And I feel like I should have mentioned this earlier. If I swear at all in this video, I'm not swearing at anyone. I don't want that to take away from the grade of my overall essay, because this video is not my essay. This video is supplementary to said essay. My essay itself should be the thing I'm graded on. But I have no doubt that Ms. Holtzing will just grade me on my essay and not this video. So now, some of you may be asking, well, with our current system, we have ways of dealing with that, right? Did I say no? Not really. Accommodations tend, while accommodations for ADHD do tend to help a lot, they don't necessarily always tackle the issue entirely. A lot of the times I found that accommodations for ADHD seem to be more so to help the instructor, not the student. Like what I mentioned earlier with, I can't remember if I mentioned this earlier in this video, if I mentioned this in the first take, that I had to pause and then couldn't unpause because my phone was being weird. But, yeah, not exactly a good system we have in place in terms of accommodations, because a lot of them feel a lot more like they're meant to help the teacher, like reminding the student to pay attention. Yeah, I'm not going to help them pay attention, I'm sorry. Reminding them to do the thing that they're already trying to do is not going to suddenly make them able to do that thing. If I reminded my English professor to play the hurdy-gurdy in the center of the town, that's not going to suddenly mean that she can play the hurdy-gurdy. Likewise, if you remind a student with ADHD just to pay attention, it's not going to really do much now, is it? And then preferential seating is also another accommodation made mainly for students with inattentive subtype ADHD who tend to talk a lot with their seatmates. This is also one that really doesn't make sense, because if you're going to sit them next to people who are generally pretty good at paying attention, they're not going to stop being bad at paying attention. They're just going to make the other students around them have a more difficult time paying attention. You're not solving the problem. If anything, you're just making the problem a bit worse. Because suddenly, instead of just simply having students who get easily distracted sat next to students with ADHD because, you know, they're going to be distracted either way, having those who are super focused now being distracted. And once again, I am not saying this is the fault of the student with ADHD. This is purely the fault of the school system. None of the blame can really be put on the student, because the student didn't ask to be there for the most part. And the thing that we are specifically looking at is something entirely out of the student's control that is being affected by a system that is entirely out of the student's control. There is no blame here on students with ADHD. There's also only very minimal blame on direct educators, like teachers, professors, lecturers, all that. And I know I said I'm not blaming my teachers earlier. I'm saying I'm not blaming them for most of it. I blame them for then how they react to students with ADHD having difficulties in the classroom, but not how the classroom itself is set up. What I will say, though, is that we need to continue on with the video lecture before I get distracted again somehow. Right. Another common accommodation, and one that I was actually also given, was extension on times to do tests, time to do tests. Didn't really help much. Either I didn't need the time for most tests, or for certain tests like the SAT, and what was the other one? The SAT was one of them, and the AP World History test I did in 2020. yeah, didn't really minimize the fact that, like, didn't really minimize the symptom of being unable to focus. It just sort of felt like a lot of accommodations for students with ADHD more feel like the education system patting themselves on the back for a job well done that they didn't do. And evidently and inevitably, at any point of discussion of ADHD in schools, the topic of medication is going to come up. And I'll say this right now, medication is incredibly effective for those who can take it. Not everyone can take medication. I cannot take medication because I am significantly underweight, and most ADHD medications have the side effect of appetite suppression. So in my case, I can't take medication for medical reasons. There are also a lot of other medical reasons why someone would be able to take medication for ADHD, such as being allergic to it, excessive dizziness, etc., etc. But looking past all of that, why should it be the student's responsibility to, well, I guess the student and the parent's responsibility for them to take ADHD medication and not the school's responsibility to do a good job at educating students with ADHD? I don't know, it just feels like there's something more that could have been done. I would have meant that at the very least for those students who can't take medication, like myself, there's something in place. And I guess inevitably we also need to talk about all the pseudoscientific treatments, like just take a walk. I guess I can't even call them pseudoscience, it's just complete BS that people say sometimes, like take a walk or just focus. And these are just so reductionist, firstly. Okay, personal little story. God, I hate having to use personal stories in essays because it feels like it's taking away from the logistical and logical side of the essay. But this is the one essay where I feel obligated to use personal stories. So I was at my job and I was talking to a very long-term friend of mine who I've known since I was like in primary school about some of the stuff I was dealing with education, because school. At the time I was still a senior in high school, so this is not directed at Penn State University at all. That being said, everything I was complaining about could very well be directed directly at Penn State as well. So the topic of education or school came up because we were both in like sociology class together, and I mentioned how a lot of the times I just simply couldn't pay attention to schoolwork, and this friend of mine like knew I have ADHD. This was not like an obscure fact at the time. She knew, and she did, like, one of the first things she said was, have you tried like paying attention to it the same way that you can pay attention to stuff like D&D and Star Wars? And I was like, when you think about it, there are no similarities between the two things you just listed in the education system. And so saying that this same property should, okay, I really got to explain this further. So people with ADHD sometimes do this thing where they hyper focus on things, and this is also a thing with autism, which I also have a diagnosis of. But I'm not talking about autism in this video lecture because that's not what I want to talk about in this video lecture. I'll let literally anyone else talk about it. And just a quick peruse of YouTube search results showed a huge inadequacy in the way that we talk about ADHD in education. Although if I look up, it's probably going to be just as inadequate, but at least there'll be like more of it, if that makes sense. There'll be more attempts, more legitimate attempts at least, yeah, just perusing through all of this right now, I can see there's at least more legitimate attempts to help students, or I guess more legitimate attempts on the internet to help students with autism spectrum disorder make it through education than there is to help students with ADHD make it through education. Not like either has an easy time or any help at all where it matters in terms of education. But that's just not what my video is about, purely because I looked up whether, like, purely because on my quick 5-second browse through YouTube of both of these subjects, there were a few more videos about autism than there were about ADHD in education that actually legitimately tackled it from a decent angle. And so this is what I'm going with. Also, I'm choosing to talk about ADHD because it's just more common in the United States, at least by United States statistics, which just tells me that there's more diagnostic, that there's more things in place to help get students diagnosed with it, which is kind of important when we talk about helping students with a thing, you know, being able to identify that the thing's there in the first place. Because 6.1 divided by 329, so about 1.8% of 1.8% of, what was it? 1.8% of people in the United States are children aged 2 to 17 with a diagnosis of ADHD, whereas 1 in 44 children in the United States have a diagnosis of autism, and there's quite a lot of overlap apparently between the two. So I'm just not, this is just not what my video is about. But I'll totally make another video about it later because there's so much I want to talk about with the education system that no one has even thought to mention for some reason. But anyways, ADHD in education. God, I've forgotten what the next thing I was going to mention was. Oh yeah, there's a lot of things I could really say about ADHD in education, and the fact that it's so difficult for people with ADHD to actually get through education purely on the fault of the education system itself should show you why I'm so frustrated with a lot of it. And the fact that this video has even gone on for 38 minutes long just shows how much there is to talk about in terms of just problems with education for students with ADHD. But there's one point I really want to hammer home, and that's that it's not okay to just force these students to go through this with no help at all and then act like they're the ones that's failing. Because remember, a lot of these students aren't doing well. And you know what? I feel like I'm going to pull up the statistic on that this time. Because I just remembered, if I go to my email and I go through the whole loop of going to... Gosh. You know what? If I go to... Yeah, if I swap my Google thing over here into a college account and search Canvas... Oh. Canvas login, and then log in real quick, and I'm gonna hate having to do this because it's gonna demand of me that I do. Okay, so I guess I'd also managed to fail the video, but I'm just gonna stitch the two videos together now. So now that I'm back doing the whole thing through English, if I head on over to my English class and I look at if I head on over to my English class and I look at my modules, and I head down to this week and I find the thing, I can just pull the statistic up for that, and I'll cite it once again in the wherever I post this video up to. I think it's this module, the one that's on the 23rd. So it's credibility, yeah, and now scroll down. Potentially not. Okay, it is. It is. Because if we look at this, individuals with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder are at increased risk for poor school performance, and pharmacological treatment of ADHD may have a beneficial effect on school performance. Conclusions from previous research have been limited by small sample size, outcome measures, and treatment follow-up. Basically, yeah, sure, medication can help, but students with ADHD tend not to do very well in schools, and that's something that deserves addressing entirely separately of the whole medication aspect of it. Because remember, there are a ton of children who have ADHD who are not able to get medication because they are too underweight, because medication has a lot of negative side effects that they can't really manage, etc., etc., who just simply are told to, like, basically told to screw off and do well. And I remember, personal little anecdote. So in my freshman year of high school, so damn, 4 years ago. Yeah, 2018, and now it's 2022. Yeah, freshman year of high school, I was in Algebra 2, which, you know, would have been a pretty decent class had it not been for the fact that ADHD sort of screwed up my entire chances at it. Entire time I was in that class, the only advice anyone ever gave me to getting things done was to just focus. And then when I failed the class in December, people were so freaking surprised that my attempt to make myself just focus didn't work. So I had to then change the thing I was doing just to make myself be able to focus. And it's not even like it was like a knowledge issue, because when I retook the class in the summer, I did half of the entire course in the span of a week while I was in a hospital. So yeah, just saying right now, education, no matter how bright a student with ADHD is, the education system will never actually allow them to demonstrate how good, like how smart they are, purely because of this singular, purely because of the singular fact that schools are designed in such a way that is so problematic for students with ADHD that they just find it more difficult regardless. Oh, a quick statistic, by the way. Approximately 5% of all school-age children worldwide are diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So remember that stat before? That was from the United States? Yeah, that's a low estimate. That is, well, I guess we divided it by the whole population of the United States. That could still very well be a very low estimate given just how low that was in comparison to, yeah. Point being, ADHD in schools, not exactly a novel realization that it's kind of not done well. And once again, I'm putting none of this fault on students. I'm putting very, very minimal on teachers and professors. Most of this goes all the way up to like school boards and superintendents and all that. Because in reality, students don't have any control over the situation. Teachers, while they have some control over the situation, they're very, very limited in what they can do. It's really once you get to the higher up, like superintendents and stuff, that the amount that they can do is so substantially lacking. And the amount that they can do is so substantially greater in comparison to the lacking actual action taken. And so I guess if there's anything I want you guys to take away from this video essay, it's ADHD in education. It's something that shouldn't be as much of a problem given how easy it is to make a system for educating people that works well with students with ADHD by simply using their natural curiosity about the world that all humans have to the advantage of the educator. But I also want you guys to take away the fact that, like, just because someone is failing the class or failing any class doesn't necessarily mean that they're not capable. It just more than likely means that the school system just wasn't designed for the way that their brain works. Because remember, my brain works literally differently from the students for which the education system was designed. So you can't try to blame the whole thing on me and just being like, oh, try to focus more. Damn it, I am trying to focus more. I have been trying to focus more for the past 13 and a half years. And you know what? This is my call to action time. We need to rethink the education system from the bottom all the way up to the point where we can actually help students with ADHD instead of just pretending like we are to make what? To make the educators feel good about themselves? I don't give a damn if they're not actually helping the students. Yeah, we need to actually do something to help the students as opposed to just the sort of superficial stuff that we do. Because everything I mentioned so far has some very obviously glaring problems that could be easily avoided. And I'm going to stop the video lecture here because it's already like 40 minutes long. And I'm pretty sure most of the people who are the reason why I made this a video lecture in the first place, or I guess a video essay in the first place, have already stopped watching because it is 40 minutes long. And I know how annoying it can be to watch a 40-minute long video if you're not doing something else at the same time and you have ADHD. Because chances are, if I were a student coming across this video, I would have just played it in the background while I was playing games or writing an essay or doing whatever. But I just want to make one more point about education for students with ADHD. It's about that point I mentioned earlier with why we can focus on you know what? I've already mentioned that. I guess that concludes this video. I will be making several follow-ups, hopefully. God, I'm so tired. I'll be making several follow-ups, hopefully. But I hope that this was a good introduction to why the education system sort of fails students with ADHD. Hopefully in my next video, I'll remember to please script literally any part of it. Yeah. I guess that's the end of the video. I don't know, I kind of feel like I shouldn't end the video yet, just in case I think of anything else to add. I'm gonna end it here. I don't know how to end the video properly in a way that doesn't feel unnaturally done, but I don't know. Slon? Goodbye? Fuck, what's it in Dutch? Oh, whatever. Just goodbye.